Grace, other than her childhood, wasn't in the Golden Theatrical Troupe. She was out doing her own thing. So I did this at Willard Library, and Amanda saw me and twisted my arm and ended up bringing me here. And it's my fault that you're in thrall. And the theatrical troupe did some performances here. I think they practiced here. Bella didn't like to perform in New Harmony because they lowered prices. And she didn't like not making as much money. Okay, so March 26, 1894, Grace Golden comes to the Grand. That was my title the last time. She packs the house at the Grand Theater. Does anybody happen to remember the Grand Theater in Evansville? I didn't, all right. So 1894, so that gives you an idea when we're talking about. That building was under construction. It's a picture of Grace in 1894. Nice thing about the Goldens, they were theatrical and they used photography. There's so many pictures of the Golden family. Grace sent this to her mom on Christmas in 1894. So this must be really close to how she looked in 1894. And let's see, that book is what caused it all. You know, I was here looking for John Kilhyman, who was the first officer killed in the Civil War from Posey County. And I found this in Evansville, and I came here because I was looking to make him a person, to find a picture, to find his story, to find his family. And I probably spent a year and a half back and forth at WMI. And I ran across this while I was doing that. And part of the time that it was a year and a half is because I spent about 3 months on this, just because I couldn't get away from it. It's a book. It's a large book, and you're going to see that when you go back over to WMI. In Memoriam Grace, probably Isabella Golden, 1903. And it's filled with pictures of Grace. And I think created by her family at her death. And nice thing about it is many of them are labeled with her performances. And there's a scrapbook in there, and in the scrapbook is this little piece, and I think it's Grace's scrapbook. It says, and it's New Harmony Times, it's in March 9th of 1894, and it says that Grace is going to be coming to Evansville with the touring production from DeWolf Hopper. He was the big regional touring production company at the time, and they're going to do Panjandrum. It's a play he had written for himself, and inside that was going to be Miss Golden as the prima donna and Miss Della Fox. So that was coming in about 3 weeks, and that clipping is there, so is that picture, which makes it just a little bit better picture of Grace. I don't know who the dog is, but it is for this coming production. So who was she? First, a little bit of Golden. Who were the Goldens eventually of New Harmony, not originally? Martin and Bella. Let's see, there's lots of pictures of Martin and Bella here, and some of these, this costume back here was Bella's. I'll get around to that other one later. These are things that Amanda and Robin found while we were doing some more research, and through here, these are actual costumes that somebody in the Golden family wore. Back there, you can see how little Grace was. So they're immigrants. Big topic right now. Martin is from Ireland, born in 35. Family left Ireland in 44. Both of them died in the crossing. Mom died early. Dad died about the time they landed in New York. Brothers picked him up, and he was shuttled back and forth, ended up in New Orleans. And in New Orleans, he worked his way into, as he became a teenager, into Ben DeBar's theatrical company. It was a big company, and this time, remember, well, I'll get to it later, but performances were live performances, and often touring performances. You know, you can't just stay at one place and perform because we wear it out. And they were moving all around. So he was in New Orleans, and Bella, Emma Isabella Llewellyn, born in 42, their family left England in 48, settled in St. Louis, skipped a lot. I think Wisconsin or Minnesota, tried farming, it failed, moved to St. Louis. Father died, mother died, sister died. But she learned to sing from her mother. But at 17, she's an orphan, and she's living with Kate Reynolds, who already had a daughter named Emma, hence Bella. That's why she's Bella Golden, Bella Llewellyn at the time. Martin had worked with Bendabar's company in New Orleans. It came to St. Louis, and that's where Bella was. And they met when she was upper teenager age. Maybe they struck up a love affair there. I don't know. It didn't go anywhere. By 1860, they're both touring, moving around. In fact, Bella was actually in New Harmony in that time period. But when Martin found out that there was an opening for an actress, he got a hold of Bella and asked her to come join him in Owensboro, Kentucky, and she did. And this is her words. On the back of a song written for her, one of the shows Bella wrote on one of the shows, "In my little room Sunday, September 30th, 1860, Mr. Golden came to me and told me he loved me. I told him this was returned. He told me how for years he had known me and said then I should be his wife." So, August 25th, 1861, Emma Isabella Llewellyn becomes Bella Golden, I guess. St. Louis, Missouri, and if some of you saw my talk on the Civil War soldier John Kell Hyman, who lived just down the street by the 4-H Center, at that very time they were leaving Evansville and going to St. Louis, and this is about the same day they arrived in Evansville. Whole different story about Bella and Martin and their stuff. That's a different story. Bella was quite the Union patriot. And if I progress through the story, we're going to find them in Evansville, and that's probably because she wasn't welcome down south anymore. They toured for several years, and eventually Martin created his own theatrical stop company with Bella as a star. In New Orleans and somewhere in Tennessee, she refused not to sing patriotic Union songs and just really got driven out of town in Tennessee. And so that's why I think they got back here, and it was time to do their own thing. They performed locally and on tour, and they moved to New Harmony at the urging of a friend, Aunt Fanny Eckerd, who offered to care for the children. I want to backtrack on the minute, but this is Bella in The French Spy, and this is, I'm going to close even closer on that. This theater is no longer there. In Evansville, it's right where the Greyhound bus station is, and that big opening where the farmer's market is. I'm going to leave that up there for a minute. Fanny Eckerd, she was from New Harmony, and when Bella was here one time, the story that there's a little brochure in the WMI about this, she and some of her teenage friends saw Bella perform here, and they were just taken by Bella and her lifestyle, and they were curious about what it was like. So at night, they sneaked into her hotel and crept up over her transom to see what was going on there. I guess they thought maybe she'd had 3 guys in there or something. She was on her knees in prayer. And they left. And the next morning, Fanny felt like she had to tell Bella what she'd done. And they talked and became friends, and they became lifelong friends. So that when Fanny saw Bella performing, by this point, we're going to see the dates where the children came. The first child came very quickly, just under the gun on the right amount of time, but barely enough. So she said, "You can't do this. You can't perform and be as busy as you are with these children." And she said, "Let me take them." She took them back to New Harmony. So that eventually means, I'm going to go ahead and different part of that slide. This is still going on in 1865. So she came to New Harmony with the kids, and eventually the Goldens themselves moved to New Harmony. And from that point on, this was their headquarters. They did their stuff from New Harmony. French Spy, then she's going to be in the conjugal lesson, and she's going to administer a lesson about being married to a young man here. And she's going to also do a wild Arabic dance. in the middle of the French Spy. Uh, so this is the later picture, probably this date, 1896. Bella, Martin, first son. Now look over here. He came real quickly. That's about 9 months after the marriage. They lived close to the same amount of time. He lived, and William lived close to the same amount of time. Grace came a bit later, but not much. I think Frances was an accident. That 10 years in there, it bespeaks, who knows what happened there. But here they are. This is late in life. And is Duke in here? Yeah, Duke's in there. Duke is in there. So this is the core of the Golden Theatrical Troupe, only the core, because there was a big company. And then this is Mrs. Eckert. She lived with them. And I've actually zoomed this picture. Mr. Eckerd's over here. But I cut him out of it. So the Golden Troupe. And by the way, I have identified where I've gotten most of these things, unless I have forgotten. Evansville Museum, probably a production kind of thing here. Golden Combination, Pearl of Savoy. This is, I think, Evansville. This is in Alabama, because they toured regionally, just like when the theatrical troupe toured. They toured regionally in Missouri, Arkansas, the southern states. They had a band, and the boys are in the band. And this is Frances, the youngest daughter. All the kids performed inside the theatrical troupe. And Grace did in this young period. You would find Grace in this period, but not ultimately. Is that picture? That's not it there, is it? That's not the same costume or anything. A little bit of Grace. Who is old Grace? This is in the WMI, and it's from 1985. It's the Opera News, and who was Goldini? Because there was a question from New Harmony about whether or not Grace had an association with the Metropolitan Opera. And so they did some research, and they found who this Goldini was, and it was Grace. It's a nice article. It begins to tell you part of her career. Carl Ritt, I just like the picture. Carl Ritt was the managing editor of the press. He died in his 60s, and guess why? But he researched and loved the Golden family, and he had 10 essays inside the Courier, or inside the press, and he had started the book, and the book is at WMI. A picture of Grace from his collection. And there are other sources over there. There's just a lot of sources. WMI has a whole shelf, a whole row of Golden information over there. So Grace Golden. She performed with the theatrical troupe. This is Grace, and that's Frances. Both of the girls broke out of the troupe and had other careers. Young, early teenager, 13, 14, 15. She had vocal talent, and they said, let's send her off to Cincinnati. And Max and Apollina Moretzek were famous opera singers who had retired. And so they sent her off, and she actually lived with them and trained with them through her teenage years. But a very big risk to send off a teenage girl like that. They missed the stage, and so they went back to New York. The Moretzeks did. And of course, Grace was still with them. She went with them at age 15. The Metropolitan Opera proprietor saw her, liked her, and they put her in the chorus, and that's where she was as Mademoiselle Goldini. These pictures, I think they're close in time period. I don't know how close they are. They're not. Many, many pictures are identified, and they give you a date. And some in that notebook, they'll tell you what production it came out of. Many, many pictures are not identified at all. And then sometimes I ended up with productions I knew of, and I couldn't find a picture that matched with them. So she's got to be close in age there on some of these. She only had bit parts as Goldini, and then she went on into that to continue living with the Moretzeks and studying with Mademoiselle Furchmade, another famous opera singer from the time period. So she's up with the big people. A turning point. I'm going to call this her Declaration of Independence.